Hey you! Have you ever wanted to grind your favorite nation, but realized they don't have any golden eagles to buy premium vehicles and premium time? Well, I have the solution for you. It's the free Golden Eagles app. You can download apps, complete surveys, or watch ads to earn Golden Eagles for completely free. Download the app with the link in the description, and use my referral code to earn 10 Golden Eagles for free when you sign up. Hello and welcome to part 1 of the 3-part nation guide series for War Thunder. In these videos, I'll talk about every nation in War Thunder, and I'll explain their playstyles, tiers, and pros and cons to help you choose a country to play. Whether you're a beginner looking for a nation to start with, or a veteran who's looking for a new nation to grind, this video will give you the answer to the question, which nation should I play? I left timestamps and subtitles for anybody who needs them. Enough of the rambling, let's get to the guide. America is pretty different from the other nations. While the others tend to focus on a couple of specific tasks, the Americans have a large variety of tanks with different playstyles. They have individual lines for each of the roles. You want to play the reconnaissance role? Take one of the light tanks and scout all the enemies you can. Want to play the support role? Take a vehicle from the medium tank line and help your allies. Want to be in the front lines? Get in a heavy tank and absorb all the enemy shells. If you can't decide on which playstyle you like best, the American Tech Tree will help you pick one with their big variety of different vehicles. Tiers 1 and 2 are similar to all the other nations. You have fast tanks with quick firing cannons and very little armor. These vehicles will help you get used to ground forces. At tier 1, the tanks all look very similar, but when you get to tier 2, they start to take their shapes. The medium tank line gets our first Sherman tank, and tank destroyer line gets the M10. These two tanks will give you a general understanding of what you'll see at higher tiers. Tier 3 is where the fun begins. Tanks like the Jumbo and M18 are some of the best tanks you'll find in the entire tech tree. The M18 is one of the fastest tanks at its tier, capable of going around the entire map and flanking your enemies. The Jumbo, on the other hand, can take multiple enemy shells without needing to repair. And if you decide to use the Sherman, you'll be pleasantly surprised with their great firepower. The 76mm cannon is powerful enough to pen a tiger from the front. They are the perfect tank to support an allied assault, and they're even good for sniping. Tiers 4 and 5 are where you see some of the heavier tanks in the American tech tree. These are tough and heavily armored tanks that pack quite a punch. While the medium tank line is more focused on mobility, the heavy tanks were meant to fight against tanks like the Panthers and the Tigers. You will have to adjust your playstyle a small bit to get used to these new tanks, but they are very similar to the Sherman and the Jumbo. Tiers 4 and 5 are also where the light tanks really start to shine. Tanks like the M41, M56 and T92 are exactly what a light tank should be. Very little armor, very mobile and with a big cannon. You can easily go around the entire map and kill anything you face from the side. And finally, we have tiers 6 and 7. You have the M60, the Bradley and the Abrams, which are still in use today. But before those, you still have to research a couple more vehicles. The medium tank line evolves into the M60s. Slow but relatively armored and well-armed vehicles that are great for supporting your allies and staying behind the front lines. The heavy tank line evolves into more of an MBT line. First, you get the XM308 and of course later on, the Abrams. These tanks are great at being the front lines with their speed and firepower. You can easily secure the objective and secure some oil supplies while you're at it. Now, let's talk about some of the pros and cons of the American tank tree. First off, they have a wide range of different vehicles and different playstyles to choose from. This will help you discover which playstyle you like best. The Americans are also one of the most beginner-friendly nations in the entire game, having tanks that are easy to learn at each tier. The American close air support is no joke either. Planes like the F-4U Corsair, P-47 Thunderbolt, and the 84 Skyraider are great at taking out enemies from above. And if you need to take out planes from the ground, the American anti-air line is also one of the best in the game. But now, let's talk about some of the cons. While the Americans have great tanks to help you get started, the tech tree starts to get repetitive after a while. Having to research a Sherman tank 7 times is not exactly the most rewarding thing out there. Another thing you need to worry about is the BRs of some tanks. For example, the Jumbo 76 can face the German M48 in a complete up tier, but luckily, this is only for a couple of tanks. And now for the final conclusion. Is the American tech tree beginner friendly? Absolutely. In fact, they're probably the most beginner friendly nation in the entire game. Which playstyles can be used with American tanks? America's a jack of all trades, master of none type of nation, meaning they can do basically any task they're given. How good is each tier? Well, other tiers have excellent tanks. You can pick and choose any one of them, and you'll most likely be satisfied. What are some good tanks I should go for? Some of the more notable tanks are the Jumbo, M18, T26, any light tank between tiers 4 and 5, the T95, and of course, the Abrams. Do the Americans have good close air support and anti-air? The Americans probably have the best close air support in the game. They also get about 5 new CAS planes each update, so you shouldn't have any problems about that. And as for anti-air, they're quite strong too. Should I play the USA? If you're a beginner, absolutely. If you're looking for a new nation to grind, America's a great choice. If you're just looking to have some fun, the Americans are still a very good option, especially at 5.7 or 6.7. The German tanks are some of the most known tanks of World War II. You can understand their playstyle by looking at their tech tree. Instead of a light tank line like the Americans, the Germans have a second tank destroyer line. The German tanks have very powerful cannons along with thick armor on almost all their tanks. If you like slower paced combat where you can one-shot most of your opponents and survive for a long time, the German tanks are for you. That being said, your speed is your biggest enemy. Most of the German tanks aren't very fast. This, combined with a lack of armor on their sides, can result in you getting flanked and destroyed if you're not careful. So, make sure to stay behind the front lines and don't get too close to your enemies. Your armor is in the front for a reason, make sure to use it properly. The lower tiers are pretty similar to all the other nations. Fast tanks, quick firing cannons, and no armor. Tier 2 is where it gets interesting though. Here, you start to see some of the best firepower at your BR. Tanks like the Panzer IV and Flak 88 have very little armor, but have excellent cannons. As I said previously, stay behind the front lines and don't push too far, and you'll start to see some results. The mid tiers are where Germany really starts to shine. You get to unlock your first Tiger and Panther, which can easily destroy any tanks you face if used properly. If you angle your armor, enemy tanks will have a very hard time trying to kill you. The heavy and medium tank line aren't the only good vehicles though. The tank destroyers are excellent as well. Germany has a very unique feature where they have two different tank destroyer lines, open top and casemate. The open top TDs don't have a lot of armor, but they have the best guns you'll see at their BR. And even though they're open top, their mobility is still terrible. You really need to find a good position and stay there until you're sure you can advance. The casemate TD line trades powerful cannons for a little bit extra mobility. These tanks have low profiles and angled armor, so moving forward with these tanks is a viable option. Just make sure not to expose your sides to the enemy. Up next is tiers 4 and 5. Here, you'll see the late World War II tanks and the early Cold War tanks. Tanks like the Tiger II and Panther F are the end of the heavy and slow German playstyle. Much like their predecessors, these tanks are sluggish, heavily armed and armored tanks. You'll have no problem getting used to them. The first Leopard tank is where things turn around though. The Leopard has the exact opposite playstyle of the Tigers and Panthers. Instead of relying on your armor, you need to stay on the move and rely on your mobility. Luckily though, the firepower is still very good, and Germany gets access to heat FS very early on. If you're unfamiliar with ammo types in War Thunder, check out my video in the info card above. Anyways, as I was saying, the Leopard is the beginnings of the top tier of German playstyle. Speaking of top tier, Germany has some of the best top tier tanks in the entire game. The Leopard line continues all the way to the Leopard 2A6, and gets more and more armor as it continues. The Tigers evolve into the M48 and the KPZ-70, which are very reliable tanks as well. Germany is very capable of fighting against any other nation at top tier, which makes them a great choice for anybody who is looking to play modern tanks. Now, let's talk about some of the pros and cons. First, the pros. Germany has some of the best tanks in all the tiers. Panzer IVs at tier 2, Tigers and Panthers at tier 3 and 4, and Leopards at tier 5 and 6 and etc. Their tech tree lets you use lots of tanks with powerful cannons and excellent armor. If you die in your Tiger for example, you can hop into a Panther or a Ferdinand. And if you don't have enough spawn points, their SPAAs are some of the best in the game. The Wirbelwind and Ostwind are extremely capable anti-airs with cannons powerful enough to even kill some tanks. Germany is great for anybody who likes to slowly go into battle and pick off enemies from a distance. And with the great APAG rounds that Germany gets at mid to higher tiers, you can kill most enemies with 1 or 2 shots. That being said though, let's talk about some of the cons. The biggest problem with Germany is their mobility. Since there are almost no light tanks in the tech tree, you're limited to a couple of specific playstyles. And unlike the Americans, Germany gets almost no close air support. Their best options are BF-109s with some bombs, or planes like the HS-129 or BF-110 with their large cannons. Time for the final conclusion. Is the German tech tree beginner friendly? Just like America, they're one of the easiest countries to play. Which playstyles can be used with German tanks? Mainly sniping and brawling. At higher tiers however, flanking becomes a better choice. How good is each tier? All the tiers are filled with great tanks, especially tiers 3 and 4. What are some tanks I should go for? Tanks you should look out for are the Panzer IVs, Tigers, Panthers, casemate tank destroyers at tiers 3 and 4, and the Leopards. Do the Germans have good close air support and anti-air? While the Germans might not have the best close air support, the heavier planes like the Bf-110 are still good options. The anti-air line on the other hand is one of the best in the entire game. Should I play Germany? If you're a beginner, I highly recommend it. If you're looking for a new nation to grind, Germany is a great choice. If you're just looking to have some fun, Germany is also one of the best, especially at 5.3 and 6.7. But there's one thing you should never forget. Germany sucks. The Soviets are generally medium tank to heavy tank focused. While they do have some light tanks, They generally focus on flanking, breakthrough, and sniping. Tanks like the T-34 are great examples of this. You can easily go around the map and kill the majority of enemies you face from the side. The IS series of tanks have lots of armor and can absorb multiple enemy shells while still killing anything it faces. The SU series of tank destroyers are excellent for sniping, with their sloped armor and big cannons. Most Soviet tanks have armor that is already angled, which means you don't have to angle it yourself. This, along with the general beginner friendliness of the Soviet tanks, makes them a great choice for any new players out there. The Soviet tree begins with fast tanks with quick firing cannons, just like the others. When you reach tier 2 though, your fast and nimble tanks turn into more armored and armed vehicles. The early T-34s get less speed, but they have more armor and bigger cannons than their tier 1 counterparts. The KV-1s on the other hand, trade almost all their speed for more armor. You can expect to withstand about 5 or 6 shots from the front before you get damaged. These are great tanks to help you get used to Soviet mid-tier vehicles. Tier 3 and early Tier 4 have the most popular Soviet tanks. The T-34, IS-2, and casemate tank destroyers are well-known tanks that are quite good in their roles. The T-34 gets new 57 and 85mm cannons, and thanks to the great APHE shells the Soviets get, one-shotting enemies is quite easy. The KV-1s get armed with better cannons and eventually evolve into the IS series of tanks. These are excellent breakthrough tanks that can get the objective done. Tier 4 is also where the light tank destroyer line takes its shape. The ASU-57 and ASU-87 are very sneaky and mobile tanks that pack quite a punch. And let's not forget about the casemate tank destroyers. While their armor might be somewhat lacking, these tanks still have some very powerful cannons that can deal with tough opponents. The same principles carry on to late tier 4 and 5. The T-34 gets upgraded to the T-44 and 54, adding more armor and better weapons. The IS-2 gets upgraded to the IS-3 and 4, adding a lot more armor and keeping the same gun. But the light tank destroyer line turns into a light tank / IFE line. Something to keep in mind is that this here is where enemies start to get heat FS, so your angled armor won't do much good. You should try to avoid getting spotted and use natural cover like bushes and trees. For top tier, the Soviets have some of the strongest tanks in the game. Tanks like the T-90 and T-72 have some of the best guns of top tier, and their armor is strong enough to take multiple shells from the enemy. They are a bit slower than their NATO enemies though, so make sure to cover your flanks before moving up. And now for the pros and cons. The pros are that the Soviets, much like the Americans, have a large variety of different vehicles to play. The tree is very beginner friendly, having tanks with angled armor, good cannons, and decent mobility, which will help any beginners get used to ground forces. The Soviets also get some of the best APHE shells in the game. The shells have a lot of explosive filler inside them, so if you can penetrate the enemy armor, it'll most likely be a one-shot kill. And thanks to the great firepower, armor penetration shouldn't be a problem either. They also get decent close air support in the form of IL-2s and TU-2s. The tree is very diverse, but it also gets a bit repetitive at times, and that's where the cons begin. The Soviets also have the same issue as the Americans, but instead of Shermans, it's T-34s. While each new T-34 is an upgrade over the last, the gameplay will be tedious after the first couple of tanks. Another big con is the SPAAs. While they might be good for a meme, the Soviet anti-air vehicles are generally not very practical. The weapons are usually decent against planes and some tanks, but there's no armor to speak of. The SPAAs only really start to get decent at tier 4 and above. And last, and arguably the biggest con of Soviet tanks, is their depression angles. Most Soviet tanks have less than 10 degrees of gun depression, meaning they can't aim their cannons lower than negative 10 degrees. You need to use the terrain to your advantage and fight on flat terrain. And now for the conclusion. Is the Soviet tank tree beginner friendly? Alongside America and Germany, the Soviets are one of the most beginner friendly nations in the entire game. Which playstyles can be used with Soviet tanks? Thanks to the big Soviet tech tree, you can easily find any tank to suit your playstyle. How good is each tier? Each tier is a very enjoyable experience, and the tanks are quite fun to play. What are some tanks I should go for? Some of the more significant tanks include the T-34-57, the T-34-85, KV-1, IS-2 and 3, T-54 and 55, and basically all the tanks at tier 6 and 7 with a T at the beginning of their names. Do the Soviets have good close air support and anti-air? The Soviets have a dedicated ground attacker line in their tech tree, giving you planes like the IL-2 and IL-10. And if you want even more planes, you can use some of the light bombers as CAS as well. However, as mentioned previously, the anti-air line is a bit lacking until tier 4. Once you get the ZSU-37 though, you're good to go. Should I play the Soviets? If you're a beginner, they're a great option. If you're looking for a new nation to grind, the Soviets are quite decent. But you should keep in mind that you have to get through a lot of early war tanks in order to get to the real beefy tanks. If you're just looking to have some fun, the Soviets are quite enjoyable, especially at 5.7, 6.3, and 7.7. Good luck in the battlefield, and may the hand of Stalin guide your shots.